This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here at the Templar Hotel with none other than Christina Turley, who's joining us from sunny California. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, this is your first trip to Toronto. How has it been thus far?
It's been really fun.
And what have you been up to since you've been here?
I've been visiting some restaurants. I got to go to my old haunt. Well, I've never actually been to the Momofuku here in Toronto, but got to go see that for the first time and gave a little lecture seminar to a group of sommeliers on Monday. Touring some restaurants, got a tour of the LCBO store, which was quite a sight, and had dinner, and now visiting some other restaurants and all around the city.
Superb. Now, you have some connection to Momofuku. Please tell us a little bit about that, because you moved to Columbia University to do a degree in art history,
Yes.
and then found yourself working in restaurants.
Indeed, yes.
How did that happen?
So I had worked in restaurants while I was in college, just as a hostess, and really loved it. I loved connecting with the people, being around food and chefs and things like that. And though I did try my hand working in the art world at first, thinking that was more of a real job, I kept found myself drawn back to reading the food section in the New York Times instead of Art Forum, and food blogs instead of, all the other stuff I should have been reading as a little gallery girl. And I finally sort of threw in the towel and decided I would go back into restaurants, which my father was ecstatic about since the art world was
Not a real job in his mind.
not a real job.
Yeah.
I was like, are you the only father in America who I said, I'm going to go be a waitress, and you're like, finally, I got a
That's
real
what I was
job. So I went back to work. I found a job at a restaurant called L'Atelier de Joël Robuchon,
Yes,
Seasons Hotel in New York, and worked there for about 6 months, but really found myself wanting to learn more about wine. A lot of people assumed I was some sort of wunderkind, having grown up around the winery with my father, and then my stepmother is an importer and distributor in California, so she brings in all of these phenomenal European wines. And yes, I had been exposed to that, but no, I did not know the difference between Barolo and Barbaresco at age 21.
Mm-hmm.
So
I still don't.
yeah, there's no difference. It's exactly the same. Just kidding.
So was I.
So I started taking classes and things like that, and really wanted to jump in and learn as much as I could. And I met the general manager at Momofuku, and I took my dad in for dinner, and had just kind of an epiphany experience there, where they kept pairing all of these high acid white wines, Rieslings, Gruner Veltliners, Chenin Blanc, with our pork dishes. And I thought he was out of his mind, because my dad's a red wine guy, and I was very much under the super basic understanding that red wine and red meat is the only kind of option with one another. And I had such kind of a mind-bending experience there that I really was like, I will do anything to come work for you. And turns out he had a position open.
And that was when you started your real study into wine.
Yes, yeah. So I started at I had taken like an introductory course at the American Sommelier Association, and then I stepped it up and took the viticulture and vinification class. Got my first 2 levels at the Court of Master Sommeliers, took the WSET Advanced. I just kind of threw everything, and was working 7 to 9 shifts a week.
That's an overachiever right there.
Or just, glutton for punishment.
And how would you describe your entire experience working as a sommelier at Momofuku?
It was so much fun. It was really fun. I think what helped is something I've always respected Chang for, is he hires young people who are really hungry. Mm-hmm. And that definitely defined where I was. I mean, I was 23, 24 when I started working there. And I was really thrown into the deep end, but I started from a food pairing perspective, because I started working at their small little restaurant, Momofuku Co., kind of the show.
The tasting
New York.
menus.
Yes, exactly. So it's only tasting menus, so you had a lot of opportunities to explore pairings. And I just really did my best to run out all over the city and see what other people were doing, and drink my way through other people's menus and wine selections, and explore, sake and beer and things like that.
Yeah.
And it definitely was not a classic training, which I was sort of grateful for, because I didn't have any kind of preconceived notions of this. Okay, so there was a very famous foie gras dish, and if you had this very classic training, you'd say, okay, of course Sauternes has to go with that. But what we actually found was this slightly sweet sake was the right thing for this, because it was a super light foie dish, and it was just so much fun to have that. I mean, there were certainly, I was studying classic things, but it wasn't so deeply ingrained in my brain that I had no bad habits of what has to go with what. It was more just kind of this sense of, I don't know, wonder and experimentation and exploration that I am so grateful for, because it was fun.
Good. In 2010, you returned to the family fold and back to California.
Yes.
What happened there?
So I came back to help out. My father had purchased this Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard just adjacent to our property in Napa Valley, and he wanted to make wine from it, but wasn't sure if it was going to be the right thing to make under the Turley label. And they said, this can be really your project. You can kind of take it and run with it. And I just saw that was a huge opportunity, although it broke my heart to leave New York and leave Momofuku. I really thought nothing like that would come around again. So I helped working the harvest. I helped design the label, and it was a great collaboration with the team at Turley. And then things just sort of, I was like, all right, well, here I am. What else am I going to do? And my stepmother, with her distribution company, had one of her sales reps who was leaving on maternity leave, and so I stepped in for her and got to carry a wine bag around and basically have my ass handed to me in terms of all of a sudden being on the other side of, on the other side of the table, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
And instead of having everybody come to me as a buyer and getting to try all of these nice wines, here I was trying to sling wine to a bunch of retailers as well as sommeliers all over Sacramento, which was an hour and a half away from where I was living. And it was very humbling.
Now, since 2012, you've been making another pet project of yours, have you?
Yes.
Tell us a little something about that.
Yeah, so I got to, the fellow who was handling our kind of distribution at Turley left after 11 years, and so I was able to step into that position, and so now I was full-time at the winery and helping out with the sales and things. And I had this idea, actually, while I was still working as the sommelier in New York, that wouldn't it be fun to have a dry white Zinfandel, like kind of bring this back. I realized this is a wine that is so hugely popular in the States. So many people have a nostalgic connection to it. It's like the very first wine they ever had, stealing it from their aunt or something like that.
The gateway wine, basically.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just thought there's also no reason that it can't be a well-made, thoughtfully made wine. There's nothing inherently bad about it, about the essential ingredient that you're working with. It just hadn't been made in a super dry or high-end style or something like that. So I called my dad and said, why don't we try this? And his response was essentially a very profanity-laden "when pigs fly." And finally, when I moved home and then I was working for the winery full-time, I could be more annoying on a daily basis, and so he gave in. So we made, the first vintage was 2011, which was sold in 2012. It was super dry. We only made 150 cases. We picked it early, so it was not a Saunier. Had great acidity, really bright, and 100% dry. And I sold it all in 2 hours.
That's impressive. That was to all your sommelier friends, I'm
Exactly.
guessing. Yes,
just in New York and California, just to restaurants. People bought it essentially sight unseen, but I reassured them there was no residual sugar. It was very dry. It was all certified organic. It was all the right thing, and nobody got more than 5 or 6 cases or something like that. And it was quite a scene.
Well, I'm looking forward to trying that out at some point in the future. You didn't make any in your last vintage.
No, unfortunately, 2015 was year 5 of a pretty horrific drought in California, and so the yields have dropped precipitously in all the vineyards, and we just couldn't make one. The pHs weren't there, the yields weren't there. They're just unfortunately.
So what new projects do you have in the pipeline right now? What's exciting you down at Turley?
We just started working with a new vineyard that we purchased in Paso Robles. That we're calling Amadeo's Vineyard. The fellow who planted it, his name was Amedeo Martinelli, so we couldn't call it Martinelli.
Obviously.
And then sometimes we'll look at a street that the vineyard is on and name it after that, but it's on Ridge Road, so that wasn't
Another problem there.
not an option there either. So we just gave it the fellow's first name, Amedeo. So I love having these new old vine vineyards. It was planted in the 1920s, and kind of learning the characteristics of them, how they present themselves. There's often other kind of interesting varieties that are interplanted.
Yes,
in
yes,
there.
yeah.
And so we have some Grenache, and it really is, it's just a phenomenal vineyard. So I'm excited about that. And we also are recently purchased a property up in Amador County, which is sort of the Sierra foothills.
Oh, I know Amador very well.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I've been there 3 or 4 times.
Oh, awesome. That's
right,
rare.
Yeah.
So it's gold rush country for us in California. You grow up learning about the gold rush, and if you live in Northern California, you go there as a kid and pan for gold. It's kind of silly. But going back there is this kind of like, this is part of where California started. There's a lot of history there, and a lot of some of the oldest vineyards in California are in this, slightly mountainous region. And so it's this fun thing to see these new, this sort of new life being breathed into the vineyards that are there and the wineries that are there. And I've had so much fun going up there and exploring, and we've got some incredible, there's a vineyard there that was planted during Prohibition by this gal whose father whose husband rather was out working for the railroad, and she, decided she had, I feel like it's the definition of moxie, just throw a knapsack on and plant a vineyard in the middle of Prohibition.
Right, okay.
in the mountains. But it produces this like jewel of a wine that's just, it's like a ruby every year, and so I'm excited about.
This is Zinfandel, I'm assuming.
It is Zinfandel,
yes, right,
yeah. So her name was Sadie Upton. We named the vineyard for her.
Lovely. Well, I'll look forward to tasting both of those at some point in the future.
Yes.
Christina, thank you so much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully we'll see you in California at some point soon.
Come on down.
Bye for now.